everybody? Welcome to another Hammer of Heretics stream. I'm Hammer of Heretics, and today I have a very special guest, one who's very near and dear to my heart. It's All Skeptic. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I've said it a few times in your streams and to some of my Catholic friends on my Discord server, but no, you when I was first starting to get into philosophy and really start to dig in, you were one of the first YouTube voices that I saw. So I've always been a big fan of the way that you explored these ideas, peeled back layers, and made it make sense to in a plain sense, right? Because a lot of times I was like, what does this actually mean? What are these questions, and how do we dig into them? And you made a lot of this very accessible for a goober like me. So I just wanted to tell you right off the bat, I'm a big fan of your work, and I thank you for doing what you're doing because it's noticed. Yeah.
It's an honor.
So I'm going to go ahead and just I wanted to give you the floor and say, hey, tell the audience about yourself. What's your background and what led you to start exploring philosophy the way you do?
Well, I would say I had a particular skeptical way of thinking when I was a teenager. Not just about religion, but about how people exist and how people live, and things like that. I still remember that I used to have a lot of debates and conversation about how one should live, because my father in particular have this idea that when you are young you should rather keep on working, so when you are old enough you find that you have enough money and investments and things like that. And from an existential critical point of view, I didn't really like that. So that's one thing, that's skepticism in social norms and values, and also religion. Not religion as a whole, as the existence of God and things. It's just like side points like determinism, fate, the problem of evil, things like that. But when you are a teenager, you simply don't give lots of time for things like that. You are a teenager, you have plenty of things to do, and your cognitive capacities are not that developed, and you simply don't have the means to investigate and to acquire knowledge and things like that. And it went on like that to like when I was like around 20, something like that. I got really into Buddhism because there was a really dark time in my life that I found Buddhism as a way to ease or stop my suffering back then, because I suffered from depression and all of that. So Buddhism, that led me again to Stoicism. I believe that there's a soul and this is just a body and life is a test and there's a God and things like that. And this ideology led me to go to live in a mountain, basically because I believed in an ascetic, simplistic way of life. But when I became like around 23 or 24, I got into a bit of analytic philosophy, which really really boosted my skepticism about philosophy, because right now I'm 24 and I have internet and I can Google things and I can get books and things like that, and started to look up logic and the burden of proof and a bit of science, and really started getting skeptical about my religion, Islam, back then. So I took the holy book and I spent around a year investigating those stuffs, until there was a time that I couldn't really keep going. It is either I stay religious, or I leave it. I couldn't go on anymore. So I left because there was a cognitive dissonance that I suffered from. And that's it. Here I am right now. And I used to watch a lot of philosophers in YouTube. And I said once, I seem to have a lot of opinions about that. So why don't I make some videos? And that's it.
Well, wow. Well, you know what? I mean, I'm glad that you took this journey and it took you to YouTube, because otherwise I never would have met you and I never would have seen your content, because funny enough, our philosophical journeys are not too dissimilar. When I was a teenager as well, like the one thing that I latched onto, you're gonna find this kind of goofy, is you remember the game BioShock?
Bioshock.
Yeah,
Is this like
Bioshock. It's a video
an
game.
RPG?
It's how do I describe it? It's a first-person shooter, but they hinge a lot of the personal philosophy in that game on Ayn Rand's objectivism, right? So my
Ayn
first,
Rand, like the nihilist.
the nihilist objectivist, exactly. So I got into that philosophy because I was like, oh, it's a video game, we all make choices. So I started. Yeah, that was the first philosophical thing I ever had exposure to, like in media, and I was like, wow, I really like this. I started reading The Fountainhead and all that. And then I think I told you I wasn't born Catholic. I converted to Catholicism
I see.
in my adulthood, but I started off as a non-denominational Christian, kind of like Danilo, right?
I see.
Where
Yeah.
hey, I'm just a Christian,
I
and
believe in Jesus. That's it.
Jesus, and my Bible. That was kind of how it started, and then as I got older, I was like, this doesn't really fit, so I started looking into for me it wasn't Buddhism, it was Hinduism and Islam. So I was like, I want to read the Quran, I want to read the Vedas, I want to see what's up with this. And made my parents really they started like, what are you doing, like and so I spent like the majority of my early adulthood basically living as a kind of a nominal Christian. I was almost atheistic the way I was looking at things. And when I met my wife, I was like, hey, dude, I'm just willing to have like a natural life, not even worry about it. What brought me into the faith again was the birth of my son, right? And I was reading the Divine Comedy at the time, so Dante. And when I saw that baby born, I was like, hey, now I see the love that moves the sun and the other stars, right? That last stanza in the poem. So then we became Lutheran, then we became Catholic, but it's been really just diving into the philosophy and learning about that stuff. So it's cool to see I'm not the only one like who went on a journey like that, right? Yeah.
Indeed, yeah.
So,
I'm surprised that you have a wife and a son. You look relatively young.
oh no, I appreciate. I'm flattered. Thank you, but no, wow. I'm 33, man. I'm old.
I see. Okay.
But it's fascinating that you did that deep dive into the Quran. Would you what were the parts that stood out most to you when you were reading through it?
There's a problem of determinism. It says repeatedly in the Quran that God wants particular things to happen in the universe, and they happen. But at the same time, He judges. I mean, how come a God can judge things out of his own volition? If I determine X and X happens, should I? There is no agent that does X because I determined it.
Yes.
This stood out a lot because this is the problem of determinism, and it shows that there is no free will. It also there's the problem of evil, and it shows also that there is some type of weakness. I mean, it's an omnipotent God. Why would you need a prophet to spread the religion? You could do it yourself. I mean, lots of problems. There is also, even though I don't like to say it because it offends Muslims, maltreatment of women, bigotry, slavery, killing. I presume you would know about it all.
Right. I mean, and to be fair, though, on the Christian side, we had up until the 1800s, even in the United States, Christian groups, denominations like the Methodists, who would engage in chattel slavery in the South and use the Bible as a justification for that. We have groups the Ku Klux Klan that will use the Bible as a justification for their maltreatment of others. So it's not simply like that. I mean, yes, certain things might be particular to Islam, but the dogmatic usage of religious texts as an abuse or as a way to abuse others is not a unique phenomenon to Islam. I think that's been around since well, it's a human problem, not a religious problem.
Indeed,
And speaking of determinism, I was going to tell you because we were talking about denominations before we went live. That there is there are a set of denominations that are strict determinists, that do hold to that, and a lot of times they don't realize, like you were mentioning, there's implication with the problem of evil, that hey, if God is the one that is directly causing this in a monergistic, meaning he is directly willing it and is the author of it, that unintentional consequence is that it makes God the author of evil, which
Yeah.
in Catholic and broader Christian theology is problematic, because God, while he may be the author of natural evil, meaning like storms or calamities in the natural world, he cannot be the author of moral evil, which would make God an evil agent himself, right? Because if he's omnibenevolent, meaning all good, and he makes evil, then he's no longer omnibenevolent, because unless that would change the meaning of what evil is, right? And it would change God's ontology, like his being, to be that author. So I guess that's the one thing, that determinism, if you take it all the way down, with a reduction to absurdity, it will lead to an evil God, right? You're almost like the demiurge, right? Gnosticism, this God who hates you, right?
I think you refer to Calvinists. Is that it?
That's it. You got it.
Yeah. Calvinists. Yeah, they say that God have already chosen the people that would go to heaven. Oh, I see.
No,
yeah.
So we believe in that predestination as well, though, that there are those that are predestined. The change is that he also believed and taught that those that were reprobate, those that are going to be going to hell, were also chosen by God. So he created people specifically with the intention to send them to hell,
Yeah.
in a deterministic
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Indeed,
So that
yeah.
is the problem. Yeah.
Indeed.
So man, yeah, I'm glad we both don't like determinism.
Yeah, well, we don't really like it. It puts really for me. If there was no God, you can't have free will, and if there was a God, you can't have free will either. It seems to be that that our brains operate in a system that we do not really choose, but what we call I, the identity of I, is rather an emergent property of that brain function, not the other way around.
Right, something of discovery rather than dictation, right? Like we discover our identities as we grow. It's something that we grow into and learn about,
Yeah.
not something that is foisted upon us, right? And I would say, in terms of like creation, well, not just creation, but in terms of causality, right? So like what causes what, and how we justify like free will or free choice in a well, at least in a Catholic view, it's through a little bit of Aristotle, right? The idea of the primary causal agent being God, and then we as secondary causal agents with our own will, and able to interact with the causal chain. A lot of other denominations don't even believe that that's possible. They'll just say, hey, God just you're just like a little robot, like doing whatever God tells you to do, until you break or until he's done with you. But in our belief, it's, hey, God can divinely intervene, right? Which is kind of what I mentioned with Kairos, right? He can just come right in, because he's looking at this from eternity, and it's a linear thing for us. But really, we can make choices that we'll interact with, and he allows it to happen because he's a respecter of persons. Just like in a problem of evil, as you know, in our way, we look at it as he allows evil to happen so long as the greater commission of good is down the line, because at any point, as the primary causal agent, he can come in and intervene. That's well within his power. It's just a matter of what we can see in our limited scope and what he sees from the totality of chronos, right? Linear time. So
I see.
And it's hard to grasp, right? Like I just, my brains are dribbling out of my ears right now. So like thinking about it, so it's a wild.
There's this proverb that we say in Morocco that say, "May God give us the fate of old ladies," because old ladies don't really question much; they just believe.
Right.
I wouldn't even call that belief anymore. I would say that their belief ascends to knowledge when you talk to them as if they know. It's not simply that they believe as if they know God exists and their God, not so that particular belief system is very romanticized around here.
Right. And that's the thing is too is the reality is we are all presuppositionalists in a certain way, right? We presuppose these things. Part of it's for comfort, part of it's just to give us a foundation, which is why it
Yeah,
becomes existential. You'll notice, like when you talk to like I've noticed it when I do apologetics with other Christians. If you push on certain beliefs, you are now attacking something that is foundational to their being, to their I, right? Like you said, like this is something identity they adopt. So
yeah,
they
yeah.
defend it that way, and sometimes they won't hear you anymore. They block it out because, like an old lady, this is something like this is I believe it. And if you try talking to an old person, it's very difficult to get them to change their
It's very
mind.
difficult. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
Um,
it's rather psychological, emotional thing.
right, and there's a point where, from an Aristotelian or a Thomistic view, faith is a certain type of knowledge, but it's the way we look at it is it's given to us divinely. It's not something that we can necessarily make on our own. So
Hmm.
there's a certain point where natural reason or the faculties of reason will fail, even with things like metaphysical senses, um, the way that we look at dreams and other experiences that are not empirical, and we kind of take that leap and make these theories. Even scientific theories, like in the empirical sciences, do hinge a lot of the presuppositions on metaphysical truths, right? We go to sleep at night hoping that the sun will come back up because we assume that that will be so. We don't know if it actually will, and it does, because again, that is a higher level claim than, hey, I have seen the sun with my bare eyes, right? And a lot of it's interesting how faith will also play a part in other places, but not all faith is equal, right? I guess faith in the divine versus faith in the natural versus faith in one another. It's interesting.
I would say, of course, in dealing with science, of course, you would presuppose the regularity of nature and the uniformity of the universe.
Yes,
And as David Hume pointed out, the problem of induction. But the problem is, even though that would itself affirm the problem of induction, we
it would.
conduct scientific experiments and it's useful. That's it. It's pragmatic. Science is very humble. We deal with it pragmatically. It keeps on working, it leads us to the moon, creates antibiotics, saves lives. It keeps on working. I think it's the case that in epistemology, you can't really be certain about something like 100%. You can't know that you're dreaming right now because when you're simply dreaming, you don't know if it was real or not. Your
Right.
brain simply says that it's real. You can't know if you are in a simulation. Uh, the argument could be made that there was a civilization before us that got advanced enough that they made a simulation and we are the simulation. A brain in a vat. That's Cartesian skepticism. Of course, I think you can only know that I think therefore I exist. I think you could
The
only start
cogito.
from there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could start from there and start to acquire knowledge pragmatically. There's this theory of knowledge fallibilism.
Yes.
If
Yes.
you
Okay.
if
So I
you
was
know about it.
like Karl Popper's falsifiability, right? Like
Yeah,
principles. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could have knowledge. You could have knowledge, but of course you could say, well, evolution is true. That I know that, but of course it's not 100% certain. If some new evidence pops along in the future, we could definitely peak, modify, regulate the theory. So
Right.
we could know without being 100% certain.
Yes, and that's why those falsifiability principles are so important, because it's in the crafting of a theorem. Well, if you're making a theory, and you're going to test it, your test must be in some way, shape, or form falsifiable, right? You must be able to prove that the contrary is true. Not necessarily to create like a false dilemma or make a binary, but there must be a way that it's not like, this. which is why repetition is important in those theories. One thing that is difficult to falsify, like it's difficult to apply the falsifiability to, is like you said, subjective experiences, right? What objective measure do we have for I'm in pain, right, or my thoughts or my dreams? There's a lot of things that do get relegated to the subjective and are impossible to falsify, right? If I tell you, oh hey, all skeptic, I saw an angel in my bathroom while I was I was reading the newspaper, you'd be like, well, that doesn't sound likely, and you can use external evidence and hey, based on this, you may be likely you have mental illness, which is, even the Catholic Church will say, if you see something in your bathroom, dude, you should probably go to a doctor first before you just think it's
indeed,
yeah.
Because we do have we have like difference between the claim that I have seen a cockroach and an angel, because we have tremendous evidence of the existence of cockroaches. We have zero evidence of the angel. And as David Hume said, for a miracle to happen, the fundamental laws of physics themselves must cease to operate. So is it the case that the laws of physics stopped, or the person, the one with the testimony, simply lied, or simply was hallucinating, or something like that?
Right, exactly. And according to Occam's razor, right, the most simplistic explanation is most likely the truth, right? Rather than like a convoluted, which, although even I can say as a Catholic that in the case of a miracle, a bona fide miracle that's been investigated and shown, there can be cases where, hey, God, who can create things from nothing, right, ex nihilo, can suspend the laws of physics temporarily for these miraculous events. Now but again, exceptions don't prove the rule, right? Or they don't disprove the rule. The rule is still in application.
Indeed, yeah.
But no, man, I love this. Oh my gosh, dude, I should have had you on here much sooner. This is great.
Presuppositionalism.
Right. No, it's a very common thing to see in apologetics too, where it's like, hey, well, we just presuppose how we get to things. And a lot of Christians, even I've talked to other Christians that will be like, oh, well, we already assume that we have the same text, so why are you going to ask me about the epistemology and how we got here? And it's like, well, that's exactly right, because our epistemological approach is different to yours. Your grounding is different than ours. So you need to justify how you arrived at this conclusion. When I was talking to you about denominations, they will assume certain premises without stating them, right? So they'll rest on the authority of the church for like things like the book of the Bible, right? How did you get to the Bible? We know from our side, it's like, hey, the church is the one that did it. We like put this together through councils. They'll just say, oh, well, they basically treat it like a drop from the sky. And it's like, okay, well, I have an epistemically verifiable chain that I can show you, hey, this is how I got it. What is yours? And they don't want to answer because, again, it's a problem of authority rather than theology. To say that the church is the source of the Bible for them is a defeat. So it's weird, right? Funky stuff.
But I think the case is if you are investigating Christianity from within, you are already investigating Christianity from within. I don't think it would be very tough because you are already inside Christianity.
Right.
I think a more honest way to arrive to the truth, if there was one, is come up with some sort of evidence or some sort of argument or proof to conclude that there is a necessary existence, and that necessary existence is personal and conscious and has free will, and it is external of the universe. And then when we conclude that, then we should know if that necessary being is actually communicating with its creation or not. And then we need after that to investigate all the religions in order to know which one is actually correct. It's pretty tough, I think.
Yeah, no, that's that right there, like comparative religion, which you, as a matter of fact, you just made a video on that for comparing Christianity and Islam, and then also atheism, which everybody should go and check out. But doing that study, like actually looking at like, okay, what are the commonalities, what are the differences? Where does this truth come from? Because truth is an objective thing, but everyone is attaining to something that they claim to be a truth, but subjective truths may be mistruths in light of the objective, right? And that's the tension, right? With that,
Indeed,
and
yeah.
doing, yeah, and then again, I could study theology until the day I die, and I could probably barely skim the surface, right? Because there's also a limitation in our retention, our ability, as humans, and how we can learn, and as individuals too, what we can retain, what we can grasp at. Yeah, so we run into all sorts of interesting problems.
There is also this problem that this idea of truth, like what is the truth essentially? Is it something objective
Yes.
in the universe? Because as far as we are concerned, I don't think that the universe cares really about the law of non-contradiction, excluded middle, or identity. It's not something out there objectively, like a star or a black hole. It's contingent on our minds. We try to describe reality as thus. And I think logic itself has failed. Like, for example, the excluded middle. It failed with quantum mechanics.
Yep. Which breaks classical logic. Breaks it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It breaks it completely. So that reinforces the idea of fallibilism itself, that we might presume that those things are foundational and universal until they're not.
Right, which has been always the case with everything that we've grasped. Right, at one point, the flat Earth, for instance, at one point we thought that the Earth was the center of the gravitational pull of the solar system. Geocentric. Yep. Before we came to a heliocentric model, a lot of things
and from
we take for
there,
granted now.
Yeah, and from there, a Newtonian physics, then Einstein's physics.
And then even now with like the study of what we were talking about earlier, like utilitarian view of pain, right? We thought babies didn't experience pain until like the 60s. The prevailing thought was, hey, babies can't feel pain. Germ theory, hey, we don't need to wash our hands. All these things that we take for granted now had to be through trial and error, and a lot of pain, and a lot of death, and a lot of disagreement had to be sussed out. Non-classical logic, I think, is going to be a very interesting one as it continues to develop, right? In computational systems, and then also in how we view it. I know already that there are moves on the Catholic side to try to rectify how non-classical logic fits, because a lot of times this rigidity of holding to Aristotle doesn't play well with the non-binary system of quantum mechanics.
There is this, I think there is, if I'm not wrong, there is this paraconsistent logic that says that two propositions could be true and false at the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
In quantum, correct. Yeah, that is both, and that's like Schrodinger's cat shows like a quantum entanglement, for instance. Like the cat is both alive and dead until directly observed. Likewise, their version of bits, which I think they're quarks. I don't know. Don't ask me what they're actually called. I did a little bit of quantum.
Yeah, I think their name is quarks. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are both 1 and 0 until observed directly, and you can use them as both 1 or 0. And even as placeholders for like your coding. It's really interesting. But
it is, yes, I agree.
But so in your profile picture, I forgot to mention this, but I changed the background to have those books. But in the background you had a picture of Diogenes in the barrel in Athens, doing his I believe he was talking with the dogs. That was right at the moment where he was about to break his bowl. So I was going to tell you, you already know, he's my favorite philosopher. But who's your favorite philosopher and why?
I think when I started Buddhism, I really liked Buddha. When I changed to Stoicism, I really liked Epictetus.
Oh, okay.
There's it's not really a book. It's just that his student memorized his lectures and wrote them in a book. His book is named Discourses, a really great book. And I think that would be like something like Nietzsche. I don't really have a favorite one, to be honest. So something like Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre, something like that. Don't really have a favorite one, to be honest.
And honestly, that
And
gives
you?
you more. It gives you more room to play with right now. So, like I said, I read through like a book of Diogenes from Oxford Classics, right, where it has like all of like his books, anecdotes. The other one I just read through was for a little bit of Thomas Aquinas, and then I have a book. I want to read Hume next. That's my next one, because I know that not just the problem of induction, but also the way he addresses
Causality.
exactly. So that's what I really wanted to get into. Um,
Yeah.
and then, like I told you, at one point it was Ayn Rand, which she's she's something.
Oh, ethical egoism.
Yeah,
Ethical egoism. I know about it. Yeah.
yeah,
If I had to if I had to choose, I think I would choose Epicurus. If you know about Epicurus.
yeah. Okay, yeah. He's the one that did the if then with God, like the existence of God, right? If God is all good, right? Like, was that him or?
I
Or
think
am I
that's
thinking?
Nietzsche.
Uh,
Like if God is all good, why do we care? Things like that, right? You
oh
could
no, it
look it
is.
up.
It is the God paradox. Yeah, Epicurus did the God
Epicurus.
paradox, right?
Yeah, yeah. He
If he's
was an atheist
omnipotent, omniscient, and
materialist.
benevolent, why is there evil in the world, right? He did that breakdown basically, and it totally it's a very
Uh,
interesting exercise. Um,
Epicurean hedonism. Yeah, he was a materialist. I think being a disciple of Democritus, a
oh yeah,
disciple of a disciple of Democritus. He said that everything is atoms, and I also think that Epicurean hedonism is quite interesting as a
oh
way
yeah.
of life.
Um, and then is your favorite? I'm gonna take a wild guess, but is your favorite philosophical school? Is it of thought? Is it skepticism by any chance?
No, I think I lean more towards existentialism. I think
Hmm.
if you're gonna tell me what's my favorite branch of philosophy, I would tell you existentialism. Even if there is no analytic philosophy right there, I think it's because this is what we have trouble with: existence. We have it
Right.
all day. We are not the whole day burdened with knowledge and ethics. We are burdened with existence itself.
Yes.
So I think pretty much existentialism is a very important philosophy, especially if you look up existentialist philosophers like Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, writers like Franz Kafka, and such.
Oh yeah. Copy.
Uh, so, uh, so yeah, I think existentialism is pretty much important. I think it can even like save you from depression or things like that.
Exactly, because it gives you something to actually yearn for. It makes you not feel so alone, right? Because a lot of times it's very easy to lapse into like this teleological nihilism, right, where it's like, oh, what's the point? And nihilism itself has become very common, right? A lot of people will even link atheism and nihilism together, which I personally think is an error, but
It
culturally
is.
speaking, we've seen that kind of pick up where they're like lumping together, almost like rolling together. But um there have been atheists in the past that don't have that view, right? There are atheists that do hold to, at least to some degree, a teleological view of the world. But
Yeah,
that existence, like you mentioned, it's something we all carry and we all live. It's a lived
yeah, yeah.
philosophy too.
I, I simply, I simply don't see how I would visit my friends, I would have goals, I would work, I would study, I would have fun, I would have meaning in life, but once God doesn't exist in my mind, all that stops. I simply cannot see how it all stops.
Right, and that's why. So it's not mutually exclusive, right? Or you can have either or. Well, yeah, you can have either or both. But I've met plenty of atheists that don't view things in a nihilistic or teleological
Yeah,
way. But again,
yeah,
a lot of times from Christian apologists, I've seen that they lump them all together. It's a generalization and it's harmful. It's a
it is.
pernicious opinion, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
an atheist could be still ethical, could have still goals,
Yeah,
could still love his friends and family.
right,
I don't think it comes necessarily from God, but rather our nature.
right. And that's and I'll tell you, I'll be I'll tell you this: I've met plenty of atheists and pagans and non-Christians that are more virtuous than many people that call themselves Christian that I've met in my life. So I don't really see how people can say, "Oh, well, you have to be Christian to do this." It's like, well, no, because I've I've met some people that call themselves Christians that have done horrendous things and die
Yeah,
and will continue to do horrendous things, and yet I've met
indeed,
atheists that would give everything they have for another or for others. So again,
indeed,
a lot of it kind of devolves to like tribalism too. Where it's like, oh well,
indeed,
I'm
yes,
part of my tribe. This is my tribe. But it's more than that. It's human. It's who we are. Anthropology, psychologically, sociologically, all of that. It's the sum of who we are rather than what we were, what label we have for ourselves, right?
indeed. I think this phenomenon of classification is rather uh, an evolutionary advantage for survival.
Mm,
People classify themselves in tribes. As long as I am with people that look like me, have the same skin, have the same language, the same color of hair, believe in the same things, I'm safe. But people don't like this. But actually, I think that racism is actually biological. It's hereditary. It's not the case that when you see people that look different from you, it's as much as like those people because you don't understand them, as if you see them as a threat just because they believe in something else or they don't look like you or they have different ideologies, because we have evolved in tribes, in closed systems, not really an open systems. Like right now I can have a flight to New York, I can go wherever I want, but it wasn't like this.
no, it was not. And part of that is also like the uncanny valley. You know that phenomena, right? Where you look at something that looks almost human, but doesn't quite, like some robots will trigger this, some movies will trigger this effect where there's like an aversion, where it's like, oh, what am I looking at? And that part of that is, like you said, these evil traits from evolution, right? That from like trying to survive in
Yeah,
hostile environment we adapt to. Same thing with like the aversion to the dead or to death, like, which is why zombie movies are so popular, because deep and ingrained within us as a survival mechanism there's an aversion towards dead bodies, towards rotting bodies, so we don't get sick and or
indeed,
spread
yeah,
disease. Yeah.
indeed, I agree.
One thing I was also going to ask you is what do you do in your free time, all Skeptic, when you're not like making your excellent videos?
Reading about things to put in videos.
Touche, touche.
Reading about things to put in videos, that's it. Or I do travel, but not lately because I think I have already exhausted the cities around here in Morocco. But I really like to watch debates, read books, a bit of science. I really like the empirical side of things, and yeah, making videos. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Drawing from time to time,
Oh, you draw?
training. Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah, I
cool.
do. Yeah,
Um,
even though not lately because it's a problem of the brain when your left hemisphere is always activated with propositional logic, analytic philosophy, and all that. Your right hemisphere, which is responsible of art, creativity, imagination, I think it gets a bit deactivated or something like that when you force your hemisphere into one side of work. So yeah.
oh, for sure. No, if you ever have a chance to post some of your drawings, that'd be really cool to see.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
What do you
Sure.
usually draw?
I like human anatomy, so that would be human anatomy, like skeletons, muscles, profiles, not like real life profiles, but just profiles, whatever, imaginary profiles, forests, why not, animals, and a bit of serial imaginative, like conjoining things that are contradictory, that have no link towards each other, and join them in a draw. Like for example, a watch with an eye, or a castle with a machine or something like that.
I like it.
Yeah,
It's
well,
almost like surrealist, you know.
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That's really cool. And what since you before when you were traveling, of all your places of travel, what's been your favorite spot so far?
There is a place that I visited. I think back then, when I was still a Stoic, following Stoic philosophy, I used to have this notebook that I used to travel and keep writing my thoughts about self bettering. I really, I have really some really different metaphysics that I believe right now.
Hmm.
Writing about spirituality and the simplistic life, and virtue ethics, and how a man should live and how a man should behave, and
Right.
things like that. So there is a place, there is a river. I think it's a very beautiful spot, a city. Its name is Azilal. It's pretty far away. This is why I liked it. I don't really like the places that people could easily reach with a bus or with a car or something. If the more there is effort into it, the more beautiful and calming it is. So yeah, how about you? What do you do?
Oh man, it's funny because I do have this well, besides the YouTube stuff, I do like to drive on the weekends, right? I mean, and I live in California, so there's a lot of driving to do. So usually I'll go up north, and just sometimes just like to shed the misses and the kids, and just be on the road. There are these churches that they have in California called the missions that the Spanish had established. So sometimes
Hmm.
going and seeing these older churches, old relative to the states, they're only like a couple hundred years old, so they're not that old, right, in the grand scheme. But they're some of the oldest buildings in California. So going and seeing these places, it helps kind of get the mind off of the woes of the world and work and everything
I
like that.
see.
Yeah.
You said kids. You have more than a son?
I have three. I have three. I
Oh,
have
nice.
boy, girl, boy. So yeah, I got bookends.
Two boys and a girl. Nice.
Two,
It's
yep.
pretty nice, man.
I know. Got. We'll see if we have more. I don't know.
Yeah,
My
why
wife
not?
might want some, but it's just a lot of money.
Uh,
The kids are expensive. Yeah, kids.
yeah, they are. What are you gonna do? It's the nature of things.
It's true.
So so, any ideas about your channel in the future?
So no, mostly just I would love to do more live streams like this. Have excellent guests like yourself on. Talk more about philosophy. I had one formal debate. I don't know if I'm going to do any more of those. That's a lot of prep work involved with it, and it just um I was like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right?
Uh,
Sometimes it's a lot of effort for sometimes the payout can be a little yeah. And plus I have informal debates with my buddies anyway, so I don't really want to go through the rigmarole of doing that. What
yeah,
what
I
about
think
you? Uh,
I don't really. It's just like revelation. Like you simply sit around and go on with your life. Some idea pops up. Oh, I think this idea is pretty good. You put it in a video. That's pretty much, that's pretty much it. I would like to have people to have conversations like this. That's really good. I enjoy it. Debates, yeah. Even though the problem with debates, they're not really productive, and that's the problem. That's
right.
there is no referee that there is no like a referee that has some objective truth and say, hey, no, A is correct and B is not. It's people subjectively say, oh, this is there is a if you I think you would have done that sometime. If you, for example, see a video, a debate, because like for example, we have person A in YouTube and person B in YouTube, they had a formal debate, and each one of them posts that video, that debate, into his channel. You go to the video A,
Yeah.
and see the comments and his and you see the
Yeah.
comments and his guys, his fans all cheering him up. He lost, he's such a dumbass, he's stupid. You go to
Right.
the other guy, and you find the same thing. I mean, who won right now?
Right, and you just keyed in on something very important. Is that the reality is a lot of these debates are more for rhetorical force rather than dialectical truth. Right, they're not looking
Yeah,
for the truth; they're looking to appease their audience. Right, it's for my side. Even and like you mentioned, even the moderators have a bias.
yeah,
They have a skin in this game.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you're not really. It's not really a truth thing. But I've had moments where I watch debates between Catholics and other Christians or Catholics and other people, and the Catholics will say things for the sake of winning, whether it's a polemic or a rhetorical statement, and I'm just like,
that
that's a
doesn't count.
terrible argument. You're just trying to win, yeah, and it's just wrong. And so,
Yeah,
um, I think a lot of times people, when they watch these debates or watch debates in general, they have a difficult time separating themselves from like, hey, I'm rooting for my side, because the goal should be we should look for the strongest case for the truth. And like you
yeah,
mentioned, though, the main question becomes, what is truth? Is it my subjective, like what feels good to me, like emotionally, what appeases my senses, what appeases my pain in my life, what is the actual driver? And that's another subjective question, right? Because ultimately, as humans, we are subjective, arbitrary, and capricious beings on our own, which we
yeah.
yeah, grasping for something to try to give us the purpose that will drive us to the end, right? I guess.
Yeah, I also like debates when they get heated, when they turn into personal attacks. That's that's when they turn into ad hominems. That's my favorite part of debate. I think it goes to like the last 15 minutes when they lost all hope of winning,
Yep.
and they
Yeah.
turn into to curses and slander.
Oh my gosh, dude. Have you heard of Jay Dyer before?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. You should watch some of his
I
debates are so funny. He's
I watched a debate of him like with T-Jump.
Oh no way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They ended up just like I said.
Yelling at each
Dumbass.
other.
The dumb. Yeah, yeah. He's a presuppositionalist. What do you think of that argument, presuppositionalist argument?
So I think that again, as a Christian, I do agree with the transcendental argument for God, right? Because we do presuppose that as Christians, but I do think that outside of this framework, outside of this paradigm, unless you like exert that control and be like, hey, no, this is the only objective framework that works, you're gonna have a very difficult time getting anyone to adopt it, right? So in like a formal debate, you can do that. If I go first and I set my frame, right, you're gonna play in my box, and it's based on Christian transcendental argument for God. You wouldn't even be able to make an argument without reasoning that God gives you, because everything hinges on Him, and then just force you into my definitions. But does that actually like prove anything? No, because again, it's a
Yeah,
presupposition that you're not obligated to accept. So,
yeah.
um,
I think the first premise, because they say, if I get it correct, he said like, God is just the necessary condition for knowledge. We have
yeah,
knowledge, therefore God. But I think the first
it's
premise
circular.
should be rather in the conclusion,
Right. Right. Rather than in the, but that's the thing,
in
is
the
that he
premise.
even acknowledges that this is a metalogical claim, so it's a higher level of logic, which means that it can be circular because it's supposed to be axiomatic too, which is another
Oh,
thing that's a difficult thing to prove. If it's manifestly true by itself, then you wouldn't need to explain it this way, right? Because that is what an axiom is. It's
okay, but
yeah,
I could grant some necessary existence for knowledge, even though I'm skeptical of knowledge itself. Let's
right.
just say we do have knowledge.
Yeah,
Uh, I could grant some necessary existence for knowledge. Like it could be a god, it could be the universe itself, it could be some Platonic realm, it could be a pantheistic god. I think there are lots of different explanations, not
right.
just a personal god.
Yeah, and that's why again, like trying to say like you have to presuppose my particular
Point
instantiation of
of
God in a
yeah,
debate may not actually be the strongest unless you have the, I guess, the ethos and the logos to carry it through, right? If we're looking at the rhetorical triangle, right, that you can make that argument and make them buy into it or play into it. But I would say that while I've used the transcendental argument for God personally in my discussions, presuppositional moves can only get you so far, right? Like there's a certain point where you have to try to bridge the gap. You have to try to meet someone in the middle, and a lot of times that's a difficult proposition. For instance, in Catholic thought, like I mentioned, Aristotle is the guy, right? Because of Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was heavily into Aristotelian metaphysics. So if you come at it with like a Neoplatonic view or a Palamist view or any other school that kind of diverges from Aristotle, there's hostility. Even though the fact that, believe it or not, so we have Eastern Catholics that are like the same as Orthodox. So they have Neoplatonic views. And that's accepted in the umbrella of Catholicism. Yet there'll be Thomists that will be like, oh no, you're a heretic. And it's like, even though they're Catholic, because they don't agree with Neoplatonic presuppositions or Neoplatonic thought on the uncreated energy.
What is the main difference between Orthodox and Catholic? I think that we could have Orthodox Muslim, that a radical Muslim that abides by the literal word and doesn't open to any interpretation. So a systematic radical. Is that what it is?
So an Orthodox Christian is like an Eastern. So you've seen them. They have So they have a different. They're from the Byzantine Empire. So you know how the empire split in half in when Rome, the Western Empire, fell during like the Vandal crisis of Rome. So the Western Latin Christians stayed on that side, and the East were the ones that were in Byzantium. So there was actually a growing divide in the language between Latin on the West and then Greek on the East. And the theology started to diverge too because of this essential separation, right? That didn't actually formally happen until the 1054 is the date that people usually give, is when the Pope and the Patriarch of Byzantium had excommunicated each other. But the real theological difference comes when you look at how they adopt these views on grace, right? So the gift that God has given. So in Aristotle's view and in Thomas Aquinas' view, it's a created phenomena, right? So it's a created thing by God. Whereas in the Neoplatonic view, which is the Orthodox view, it's a uncreated grace, right? And so then this kind of comes into the ontology of God, and well, can a created effect be the same as an uncreated? If you have an uncreated effect, does it have its own ontology and then become a separate God? Now, I myself, I just talked about this on my last live stream about Aristotelian metaphysics. The acts of God, which in Greek are energeia, so they adhere into God's essence, right, which is his ousia. They don't spring up their own being, so having an uncreated grace that he interacts with us isn't a challenge to his ontology or his divinity. But again, in these Eastern Christians that have joined back into the Catholic Church, practice this and hold this theology, and the only thing that they do is kind of accept the Western ideas, but they still practice their Eastern thought, if that makes sense.
I see. How about the Trinity? Denominations of Christianity, they all agree about the Trinity, or there is some disagreement?
That's a spicy one. So there are actual disagreements about how the Trinity shows itself. Now, we have these creeds that were made for in the early church based on the councils when people weren't very literate. So the creed was, and we still recite these at least in the Orthodox, Catholic, and then like the Lutheran, Anglican churches will recite the creed during their services. But the disagreement comes in the procession, how things happened. What are the relations between the persons in the Trinity are pretty settled. But the procession of how this kind of dovetails is where the disagreement comes. So you've probably heard with Jay Dyer, for instance, where he'll say, regarding the filioque, right? Like proceeds from the Father and the Son. That's a Catholic addition that happened in the council. I think it's a Council of Toledo in the 700s to combat Arianism, which was a heresy. But the original creed did not have that clause. It just said proceeds from the Father, because the Father is the source of all creation, and of all things, right? Because even the Son was begotten of the Father before all ages. Not that he's a created effect, but that he was begotten from him of the same essence. So everything proceeds from the Father. And so Thomas Aquinas reconciled this by saying, hey, God the Father is the immediate cause, right? Talking about causality again. And the Son is a immediate cause of the Holy Spirit. So it still comes from the Father through the Son, and then the Holy Spirit is spirated. So that's a big thing. Like, I know I just threw a lot your way, a lot of gobbledygook. So just let me know if it's clear as mud, basically, or...
I see. Now I do understand why Muslims and Christians do contradict, because when I used to read the religious text, they say that the Father is the main guy,
Mm-hmm.
the main guy. So that's Allah, that's the Father, and the Holy Spirit is basically Azrael, an angel, Gabriel. They say that the Holy Ghost is Gabriel,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
yeah, and Jesus is just like Muhammad, just like a prophet. That's what they
Yes,
believe. Yeah.
that's right. They also, if I recall correctly, when there was a part of the Quran where Allah asked Jesus, Jesus, son of Mary, did you ever tell people to worship Allah, Mary, or yourself and Mary in your prophecies? And he said no. And so that actually was a heresy at the time. It's called Coloroidism, where people were actually worshiping Miriam, right, Mary, the mother of
Of
Jesus,
Jesus. Yeah.
yeah, as a deity, as a goddess. So that so that
I
people
see. I
did
see.
some weird stuff back then. Yeah.
But so I do understand. I do understand this idea of about the Father, where it came from, and
Yeah.
the Son. Of course, the Son is Jesus. We see him crucified, but the Father, of course, the one with whom he communicates. But where does the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit come from? Like, how do they deduce that it exists? Like, it's not that it exists like ontologically. Just what is his role in theology? The Holy Ghost.
So his role is he's a guide, effectively. For example, in the Pentecost, he was breathed upon the general church, but before that, he was breathed on the apostles. So Jesus had the apostles together in John. He said, "Hey, all that is in my power is given to you," and he breathed the Holy Spirit upon them and said, "Hey, this was talking about forgiveness in particular." But essentially, what the Holy Spirit is the paraclete, right? That in the Greek, it's the helper, right? The one that's coming to guide the church into the fullness of truth. So he also manifested in Genesis, where it says that the Spirit of God was
Was
hovering over
hovering.
the waters. Yeah, over the chaos of the world, the tofu va bohu or something like that in Hebrew. And then they also show him again in Jesus's baptism. So to begin his ministry now, you can see kind of a prefigurement, is what we call it, of what will happen to us in our baptisms. And so the Holy Spirit descends like a dove, right? That's why they always show him like a dove, or in depictions as a
Yeah,
dove.
dove in the
He's not
pictures.
actually a
Yeah.
dove, but they said like one. But hey, people, make their artistic drawings. So that was to show, like, hey, when we're baptized, we receive the Holy Spirit, and since it's God, He can dwell within all of us in an omnipresent, an imperceptible way, right? Some people say, oh, like you've seen people like Pentecost will be like Pentecostals will say like, oh, the gift of the Holy Spirit is you babble in tongues and stuff, but it's more that we're given insight and kind of have a divine connection. This is part of the partaking of the divine nature is what they call it. This Saint Athanasius had said it this way: is that God became man so that man might become God. Now, not like we become little g gods like the Mormons, right? Where we, hey, I get my own planet. But It's that we are able to share in Christ's divinity because he condescended to the flesh, because he shared in our humanity, and that is part of what happens in paradise is sharing in this. We call it a beatific vision, the blessed vision,
I see.
and it unites us with God's will. So that is our ultimate destiny, right? In the Christian thought, is that we unite ourselves with God, not with his essence in like a, we become God like that, but we share in it, and we unite ourselves in a corporate way to him. And so I know that's a lot of
course.
woo woo, but yeah.
Is it the case that more Christians turn to be Muslims, or is it that more Muslims turn to be Christians?
Ooh.
If it is the case that more Christians turn to be Muslims, are you concerned?
So I guess one thing that I've noticed is that catechesis, right? So teaching of the faith has eroded, and that's just across the board in all the denominations. Catechesis is a problem. So a lot of like poorly taught Christians will go out and are unsatisfied, and they're just like, well, I wasn't taught anything, or I just got taught this. That's how people convert, not just to Islam, but any faith, right? Like myself, I wasn't taught diddly squat when I was non-denominational. I learned like the basics, but I wanted more. There's a desire for more when you're not formed. And so I would say if there are more converts to Islam, the concern should be to teach the ones we have still what they should believe and why, rather than to attack Islam and be like, oh, well, why would you do that? Because an apologetic itself is a defense of the faith, not an attack on theirs. And if more people from Islam become Christian, I would hope they do it for the right reasons, right? The thing too is like, if they just are like, oh well, look at that incense, look at the smells and bells, that's what they call it. Like if they just see like the externals of the liturgy and are like, wow, that's why I should convert, that looks so cool, you know what I'm saying, rather than an actual belief. I guess that's the question. It's like there are bad reasons to convert to Christianity as well,
I see. There's also this well, since you are Christian and I am an ex-Muslim, we could talk shit about Muslims.
No, I don't want to do that. If you're comfortable, I'm not going to tell you what to do, brother. But
not like literally, but they keep on always, because I don't think that Christians do that, but Muslims keep on always boasting that we are the most growing religion, and they ascribe that to some type of truth, a comforting truth, and they also say that Christians turn to be Muslims because they found the truth and all that. But the problem is, for Islam, in Muslim countries, people that change their faith don't really get counted. Like, for example, I'm an atheist for like a couple of years now. I'm still being counted as a Muslim.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So they don't really get the calculations right. And even if I didn't become an atheist, like for example, I became a Catholic like you, or Christianity or a Jew or whatever, they would still regard me as being as a Muslim. And of course, I cannot come out. So because of Christianity, when this point is being brought up in a debate, Christianity find themselves humbled, because in Christian countries, when somebody renounces the faith, it becomes public, because he fears nothing because of human rights and all that. But when Muslims do it, it's not the case. Right. I could tell you that some people still keep on going to the mosque just because they fear their surrounding, while they don't believe in a God.
Right, and I guess that is one new thing that was added to Judeo-Christianity from Islam, was the idea that killing the infidel or killing the unbeliever or killing the apostate is something that should be accepted and done. One thing I would let you know, though, all skeptic, is that in the Catholic and Orthodox view as well, there's an idea that like, hey, once you're Orthodox, once you're Catholic, you will always be Orthodox or Catholic. Going to if you lapse into like non-denominational church or anything else, you'll still be counted on the books as Catholic. So they
Oh
do the
yeah,
same thing. So and I will say this, that size or number of adherents is not indicative of truth. That goes for us as well. For instance, in the early church, the Arian crisis, the Arians who believed that God was a created being, not in the Trinity, were the majority of the believers. So I've heard Catholics say this during debates, where they'll be like, "Oh well, we've got 1.2 billion Catholics," and it's like, okay, what does that mean? There were like millions of Arians, and there were like maybe
yeah,
like a few thousand Trinitarians at one point. Does that mean they were right because there were more? It does.
yeah,
So that
exactly.
I don't like when people do that with from the Christian side, where it's like, okay, well, we have more now, but numbers are
Numbers.
not dictated by truth. So if we lose, like if the Catholic Church gets like decimated one day by like a plague or something, I don't know, and there's only
Yeah,
100 Catholics, is the truth hinging upon the numbers? So now who's next? The Protestants would be true.
yeah. Like
It's
for
yeah,
example, in theory, just in theory, even though it's pretty far fetched, like USA right now is fighting Iran and the Middle East and the whole
oh yeah,
political. If it keeps on going, Christians and Muslim numbers will keep on diminishing,
yes.
and India will still have its numbers rising. So Hinduism will be more more correct than
Then everyone else, yep. 'Cause- there you
damn.
go.
Oh
Well,
man.
man, but no. So to answer your question about all this to say about converts, one thing that I've seen is that in the West, the number of conversions from other denominations has increased, but the real growth for the faith, at least on the Catholic side, is coming from the third world. So right now in like sub-Saharan Africa and the Philippines, that's where the growth is really happening. Previous strongholds like Latin America, for instance, for obvious reasons, that was a Catholic stronghold, are now kind of changing, and they're becoming more evangelical. So turning outside of the faith. Um, Now, as for in Islam is also growing heavily in Africa as well. I know that it's really picking up there. So
In Africa, I could only speak about North African countries, and it's not the case. I
oh,
think because we are still backwards. We are still fighting for to be more liberal, and you can eat in Ramadan, and you could have sex with whomever, and we won't LGBTQ and all that. People still, as I said, people still are afraid to come out. But just like in the server, in my server in Discord, I figured out that I have like around 2 or 3 Moroccan atheists right there. I didn't even know about.
oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
I didn't even know about. So and if even if when you go to Facebook and go to the comment section, and where people can comment anonymously, you could see that a lot of people are actually left leaving the faith. And with Tunisia, I can say that Tunisia is even more people leaving the religion. They don't even fast as a majority anymore. Algeria, a little bit. Libya, I don't know about, but Egypt, yes. But Egypt, they're still holding to the faith. I want to ask you about something.
Hmm.
Don't you see that there is a correlation? Because I don't want to call it accusation, yes, yet there is a correlation between poverty and faith, and the poorer the country, the more religious it is.
yes, no, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because even in the Bible, this correlation is made where Jesus is talking to a rich man, and the rich man said, "Oh, Rabbi, what must I do I adhere to all the laws, I do all this stuff," and he's like, "Well, sell all your things and come follow me." And the man couldn't because he had so much wealth and he didn't want to give it up, so he walked away. And Jesus said that I will tell you that it is easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, because the more wealth you have, the more possessions you have, it's harder to keep to the faith, because you cannot, what do you say, you cannot serve both God and mammon being greed, right, or wealth. the other thing is that the love of money, right? In Latin, they say radix malorum est cupiditas. The love of money is the root of all evil, right? This greed that we have in us, this desire for more. So in a place where they have nothing, right? This hope, because that's ultimately what religion has to offer. What God, regardless of the walk, it's hope. The hope for more, the hope for something better than this life, the hope for something better than this suffering. That is what draws them in. They are able to have more hope. Whereas on like the Western side, the more developed side, the richer side, you become more jaded, you become more bogged down with the weight of the world. So that's kind of how I would view it. What do you think though?
I think it is the case. Yeah, I think it could be more than just a correlation, more of a causation.
Yeah.
And you could see that in very affluent countries like North European countries like Denmark and all, they're affluent, but they don't really have they're an atheistic countries. But the more you go to South America and Asia, and like Somalia in Africa over here, and Nigeria, the more you see that, like as if you reinforce this idea that this world, you have already lost to this world, so hang on to the very bit of hope in the hereafter.
Right, and that's kind of what there's a philosophy or a train of thought in Catholic monasticism. It's called memento mori. Remember, you will die. Right. So that was an old greeting that they would say to each other, and this idea that, hey, we are not guaranteed any time on this earth. Right. We don't know, even if we were. So Thomas à Kempis, who was a monk, used to say this. He'd say, hey, when you go to bed at night, you cross yourself, right, like in your sleep, before you sleep, because you're not guaranteed to see the morning. And when you wake up, you cross yourself again, because you're not guaranteed to see the next night. You should always remember that you will die. And I guess it's not, and maybe it sounds fatalistic, but we should acknowledge that, hey, you know, death is natural to life, right? We are born to die. There was a Italian proverb, the pawn and the queen, or the pawn and the king go in the same box at the end of the game, right? So at the
I know about
as the great equalizer, right? You know, we'll all be worm food one day.
Yeah, and I remember when you mentioned Jesus talking to that rich man to sell his stuff and come follow him. It sounds pretty much like what Diogenes did to Crates.
Right.
When he told him just lose your possessions and come follow me, and Crates said, Crates freed Crates.
Yep.
From possession. Yeah.
And Diogenes too freed himself from his own possession with the bowl, right? When he's like, well, what have I been doing this whole time to break the thing? And then and that's where a lot of like the discolid orders, where they live like no shoes and impoverished, the mendicant orders are I do think, whether it was conscious or not, they borrowed a lot from Diogenic thought, where they're like, hey, they're the cynical thought of like, hey, you know, we should live more like this, more closer to the natural faculties, you know, and it'll bring us closer to God, I guess is kind of the thought.
Yeah, Stoicism started from cynicism.
Yes,
it's just like cut down from masturbating in the street
in the marketplace. If only I could cure my hunger by stroking my belly.
Just cut down from that, and kept everything else.
Right. Remember the story with Alexander, where it's like, oh, you know, who? If I could be anyone, I'd wish I'd be Diogenes. And then Diogenes was like, well, if I could be anyone other than Diogenes, I'd still want to be Diogenes.
Could you stay away from the sun? And there's also this anecdote that he was with a conversation between him and Aristippus. This was a hedonist philosopher, a philosopher that only believed in the pleasure of the flesh.
Oh boy!
And he used to quote Dionysius. There was an emperor, Dionysius, there was a tyrant, not just an emperor, a tyrant. I don't know if I said his name correctly. So he used to court him and lick his boots to get perks from him.
Oh my
So
God.
he passed some day next to Diogenes and said, if you were a friend to Diogenes, you wouldn't you wouldn't uh, you wouldn't watch vegetables. And Diogenes said, and if I watched vegetables, I wouldn't be a friend to Dionysius. Yeah,
He had a really sharp wit. You know, that's one thing that I think we really do miss in our current education system is like they're not really teaching philosophy, and they certainly don't teach rhetoric or these one-liners like the even the Spartans, right, in the Agoge would learn like these really like snappy one-liners to say to people, which yeah, no, I think the
I,
collective
I,
consciousness is getting
I agree. We, like, for example, in our educational system around here, like for example, I ended up being very interested in philosophy. But when I studied it when I was like 15 or 16, I don't think that was philosophy to begin with, because that was just like the history of philosophy. You know who is that and who is that and what did that guy said and what did that guy said, and that's it pretty much. You don't really like philosophize. You
right.
just remember what Socrates said, his student Plato, Aristotle, Michel Foucault, whatever, and you write that in exams. That's pretty much it. But you don't really like learn philosophy, learn to philosophize.
Right, which was how classical education used to be. It was disputation. You would get in a room, after study, and then you'd say, "Okay, what are your topics? Let's go hit the debating ring," and that's what they would do. That's the essence of a classical education. Now we
Yeah,
don't really
that's
do that. It's like, hey, you can go join a debate club if you want, but are you really learning how to use the tools? And that's the main thing. Like, hey, I can learn about Socrates, but the application of the Socratic method, it's something that's a practical application, not it's not a quiz on what he said, like you said.
indeed, yeah. Just the theoretical part. Just like it's just memorization of informations about the topic,
Right.
not the thing itself.
Right. It's like learning about the parts of a car, but not how to drive a car. You're just like, hey, I know how to I know what the
Exactly,
engine looks
exactly.
like, but don't ask me what it means to turn the blinkers
Uh,
on or
just
yeah.
like Mary, I think that's Mary's room. Like for John Sorrell, she knows everything about red, the wavelength, the object that are characterized with the color red, but she never sees the color red.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so she learns something when she sees the color red.
Right. But
Exactly.
I was gonna tell you, brother, we're coming close to time. So I was gonna ask, is there anything you wanted to say to the viewers or add before we sign off?
Uh, I would want to say take care and stay skeptical, and I don't really think that there is some meaning to the universe or something like that, but you could be pragmatic about that. So if there is no meaning, so you take the freedom of not having any meaning imposed on you, and you could go on and create whatever meaning you like. It's simply meaning is just pleasure in disguise. I would say something like that. So keep on following meaning and stay safe, and that's it, and thanks for watching.
Right. And to add to that, like he said, don't if you assume that you're already in a place where it's like I'm set, whether you're Christian, whether you're Islamic or Muslim or any other walk, if you assume that you're full, you're not going to learn anything more. You've already assumed a place of epistemic privilege that you shouldn't. A hungry bear who thinks he is full isn't going to get any honey, right? You need to go out there and start searching. Look for the truth. Keep that spirit of inquiry. Like you said, be skeptical. Trust but verify, right? Don't just take something that's like, oh, well, my pastor told me this, or my teacher told me that. It's like, no, well, you should look into it. And even if I say something, don't take it with a heap of salt. Go and look it up. Go and search, because at the end of the day, this is a journey that we're walking on, and it doesn't end when you think it's when you think it's done. It's when it really ends. So no, thank you
Exactly.
again so much for coming, all skeptic, and please check out his channel. Like I said, he did an excellent comparative study on atheism and Islam. Like and subscribe to my channel and to his. Give him some love, give me some love too, and thank you again for coming, brother, and take care,
Thanks a lot.
everybody.
Take care of yourself.